Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. I have a special guest for you today, Tony Martignetti, who is the evangelist for planned giving, which we're going to get into in just a minute. Tony started as a frontline fundraiser back in 1997 and kicked off his consulting in 2003. He knows how to launch and grow planned giving fundraising programs. He also used to be an attorney and a stand-up comic, so we're going to have a good time today. Tony is active on LinkedIn, and we'll include his website and links in the show notes. And you can find his consulting practice online, as well as his podcast, the Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, and Big Nonprofit Ideas for the other 95%. Welcome, Tony. Before we dive into planned giving, would you share something about yourself personally for our audience to round you out as a whole person?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's a pleasure. And I've always loved your last name, Olivieri. What a beautiful Italian last name. Of course, I've got Martignetti, so I admire Olivieri. Yeah, personal fact about me, I live on a beach. I live in a little beach town called Emerald Isle, North Carolina. The ocean is right across the street. Every morning when I wake up, it's there. It's there.
I love it. I love it. So I know our listeners want to know about planned giving, but maybe they didn't know they wanted to know about planned giving. So why don't you start by telling us, what is planned giving and why do you want to know about planned giving? Why is it so valuable?
Well, these are the types of gifts that people are thinking about, including your work, your nonprofit, as part of their long-term plan that's mostly for their loved ones, their estate plan and their retirement plan. But they're considering how you fit in, how your work can be also a beneficiary. There can be a gift for your nonprofit alongside the donor's husband, wife, partner, children, and grandchildren. And these are valuable because they help you build your sustainability. They do that through helping you build or launch your endowment. So even if you have zero endowment, you don't have anything in a long-term fund, an endowed fund, planned giving is the ideal way to start. I mean, all the biggest charities at some time, maybe going back to the 1700s, but they all had endowments of zero. And so you shouldn't be discouraged. Planned giving, most of the gifts that come are unrestricted gifts, especially the type that I think we're going to focus on today, gifts and wills. And you put as much of that unrestricted money as you can when it does come into your endowment. And that helps you build your sustainability for the long term.
I love it. So when we're talking about these folks who are going to be gifting money, who are the best kind of prospects for planned gifts?
You want to be talking to your long-term, committed, loyal donors. So let's say your nonprofit is just 20 years old. These are the folks that have over 20 years have given you 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 gifts, because lots of people give gifts multiple times a year. These are your most loyal, committed donors. Those are the folks.
And does it matter if those were big gifts or small gifts?
That's a great question. Absolutely not. I don't care if the average gift, let's say they gave you 30 gifts in 20 years. I don't care if the average gift was $5. They're thinking about you so often. They love your work. There's a good chance they wish they could give more, but they feel that they can't. So when you're looking for their committed, loyal donors, that's a great question, Sarah. No, you're not interested in the lifetime giving total. their total lifetime value as a donor, or their average gift size. You're just looking for that longevity over years, and in lots of cases, I'm sure, over decades.
Yeah. So for those people wondering, like, well, what of these people who didn't have much to give? What changes in somebody's ability to give when they're thinking about planned giving versus when they're alive?
Well, they have a lot more assets. Most of us will have more liquid assets at our death. And I do say death. I know some people prefer to say on the passing or when the gifts are realized, or I just call it as it is. It's the D word. I don't think it's a dreaded word. It's when someone dies and they have a gift in their will for you, that will become a gift of cash to your nonprofit. And most people have more cash at their death than they do while they're living, because at their death, things are going to be liquidated, like probably their most valuable asset, their home or homes. So they have more available cash in their estates than they do at their while they're living.
Yeah.
We. That's true for me too. It'll be true for me too.
Yeah. When you think about, how this gift is going to come, are we just talking about cash? Are we talking about property? Like, what are the forms? What should folks be kind of looking out for about how this final gift comes to them?
I would say 98, maybe 99% of all the gifts that I've seen in wills, and as you said, I've been doing this since 1997, so 27 years. I almost got myself short. I almost took 4 years off my resume. 27 years. 98, 99% of those gifts in wills, the most desirable, easiest to deal with, simple gifts of cash. And as I'd said earlier, most of those gifts are unrestricted gifts of cash. So they're easy to deal with. Sometimes there are naysayers about planned giving. And I channel the naysayers, but I'm not very polite because I don't really have a lot of tolerance for naysayers. Oh, it's going to be so bad. You're going to ask for gifts and wills, and you know what people are going to leave us? They're going to leave us junk cars. That's what they're going to leave us. Not even valuable cars. Junk cars. All right, naysayer. First, I think you should think more highly of our donors than that they would stick us with a crummy gift like that. But
I mean, these are people who want to leave a legacy, right?
Yeah.
They want to have a lasting impact, and you don't do that with a junk car.
Of course
Everybody
you don't.
knows
and,
that. What,
and they're your most loyal.
what else do
committed
they say?
donors. They don't leave you junk cars.
That's
but
right.
But I've heard it. I've been in the board meetings. I'm not saying all naysayers are in boards, but a fair number of the naysayers are on boards because they don't know about planned giving. They have their own expertise in their own business lives. They're not familiar with planned giving. So you can assure them that the Tony M something, the long name, I don't remember what his last name was, but he's been doing it for lots of years. I don't remember exactly when he started. I don't remember his last name. He's got a lot of years. And he said the vast, vast, vast majority of gifts are the most desirable, simple gifts of cash.
Yeah. So what are the other things that the naysayers say? Because I've never heard any naysaying other than people who didn't know. And I'm like, you really got to get on this planned giving thing. So I want to hear all the naysayers.
You want me to channel the naysayers a little more? Okay.
Channel away.
Okay. Oh, we can't do it. We're going to have to talk to people about their death. I'm not going to go talk to people about their death. Are you? Are you going to go talk to people about their death plans? I don't think you want to do that. Okay, naysayer. I cut the arguments off at the knees, not the naysayers themselves. I'm not advocating violence against your naysayers, only violence against their arguments. Okay, so to cut those arguments off at the knees, you're not talking about death. You're talking about life, the life of your nonprofit, the sustainability of your mission, your values, your work. How important it is that work continue for decades and generations to come. Put another way, you're talking with your planned giving donors and potential donors about the one thing that you have in common with them, your mission. You love it. I hope you love it because you're raising money for it. You love it and you know that they love it because they are your loyal, committed donors. So when you're talking to the right prospects, going back to your excellent question before, who are the best prospects? When you're talking to the right prospects, you have your work in common with them. And that's
Yeah.
what the subject is about. The longevity of your work in your community and how a gift in their long-term plan can help ensure that longevity. So it's not a gift
And what a
about,
great gift to them.
it's not a gift about death, naysayer. I mean, a conversation about death. It's a conversation about life, the life of your nonprofit.
All right, give me the next one. What are the other naysayer comments?
Oh, it's too technical. Oh my God, we're going to have to learn so much. You're going to spend thousands of dollars on professional education and development for you or for the development staff. Oh, you're going to have to learn all the details about tax code. Do you want to learn the Internal Revenue Code? I don't think you do. I know I don't. Okay, naysayer, out the door, please. We've had enough of you. When you launch planned giving properly, it's simple. You launch with gifts in wills. Because, Sarah, there are 3 things about gifts in wills that everybody knows about. Everybody knows how a wills work. Everybody knows what a will is. And everybody knows that they need to have a will. So those 3 things are in your favor on your team, your development team, or if you're the sole development officer, or if you're the CEO doing the fundraising. You know what a will is, you know how wills work, and you know that everybody needs one. That helps you. You don't have to learn the nuances of a charitable remainder unit trust with net income makeup provision, which is a real thing. I didn't just string a bunch of words together. That actually exists. But you don't have to know about it because you're talking about gifts and wills. And those 3 things also apply to your donors, especially when you're talking to your older donors, which are most likely to be your loyal, committed donors, folks who have been giving for decades. They're likely to be 55 to 60 and over. They know all about wills. So you don't have to spend precious marketing research or marketing dollars and time explaining the nuances of those arcane trusts or life insurance, or it's just simple gifts and wills. Alongside your husband, wife, partner, children, grandchildren, there's a gift for us. So that's another, it's not too technical when you launch planned giving correctly.
Excellent. Well, I want to ask you about how to launch it. But first, do you have any other naysayers for us? Or shall we go
Nothing
into how to start?
that comes to mind right now. It's going to be so expensive. Oh, we're going to spend so much money, not only on the professional development courses that you're going to have to take. Just a minute, naysayer. We already negated that part of your argument. We just talked about that. So you're mistaken about that, naysayer. And in terms of other marketing dollars and fancy events and things, no, it's not necessary. If you're hosting an event, you can drop a couple of remarks in the speaking points that maybe you're delivering or maybe you're drafting for the person, for your CEO to deliver. We're focusing on the long term, folks. You're all here because you know how important our work is here at this event. Now I'm switching. I'm not channeling the naysayers. Now I'm channeling the CEO, delivering to the audience. You're here because you love our work. We're focusing on the long term of our work. And it's so simple for you to help us in the long term because it's simple for you to include us in your wills. So we're asking that alongside your loved ones, you consider a gift for our work, for us. And you can talk to Sarah in the back, and she could give you some information about, that's right, Sarah's ready in the back, and she could give you some information about doing that. But we're not setting you up, Sarah, for a technical conversation about wills, because this goes to the other naysayer argument about, it's so technical. No, you're not, anything that's related to do I do this as a residual or outright, or how do I do this in the will? That's you're going to be politely referring the folks that come back to talk to you to their attorneys, to talk to their attorneys about the technical part.
Yeah.
What you're going to talk
So
to
what
them,
does that conversation sound like? What is Sarah in the back of the room going to say, probably?
she's talking to folks. I'm not going to talk about you like you're not here. She, third person. You are talking to folks about what you have in common with them. They're your donors, your loyal, committed donors. The work, how important your work is. So Thanks so much for, I'm glad you came up. Thank you for your interest in including us in your will. It's really easy for you to do. And it's so important for our work because you know that the program where we're helping the mothers and children of domestic violence, you know that shelter down the street has to be here with us in our community for decades and generations. Regrettably, the need for our shelter is never going to go away. And so a gift in your will can help us ensure that shelter doesn't go away. Because imagine how bad it would be for the community 20 years from now if we had to close that essential shelter, which is now filled with 18 moms and their children. And if you'd like, we could go over and tour it. But
so just like any donor conversation, establishing the bridge between what they're passionate about related to your mission and what you're doing in your mission, and solidifying that cause-centered relationship.
Exactly.
And then the technical part, it sounds like it'd be as simple as just let your attorney know. And here's my contact information. Let me know when you've done it, and I'll make sure, or I'll follow up in a couple weeks to see how the process went. Something like that.
Precisely. You nailed it. Yep.
All
Not
right.
surprising.
Awesome.
Not surprising. You've been doing this.
I'm ready to be a pro planned giving
You are.
donor.
We all are.
Development officer.
When you do it right, it's not hard, and you don't have to spend a lot of money, and it's not a death conversation. None of those myths are true.
Yeah. So let's talk about how, for those folks who are going, okay, this sounds good, it sounds possible. What do you recommend for how people who want to get started with this at their organizations? What are their steps they need to do? And what are maybe the prerequisites, things that they should already have in place before they get started?
Yeah, the prerequisites are low. Some folks want to have a gift acceptance policy, and so that's for the more technical gifts that you may get to in the future years of your planned giving fundraising program. And I say may because you could continue for a long, long time, decades, in planned giving and be very, very successful only promoting this one type of planned gift, the gifts and wills, because they're the most popular gift by far. At least 75%, and I've seen as high as 90% of all the planned gifts in full-blown, more robust planned giving programs are these simple gifts and wills. So they're the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And if you don't ever want to go into the more technical gifts, you don't ever have to, ever. So,
yeah. I imagine too, correct me if I'm wrong, that those people who hear that you're looking for gifts and wills, if they're the kind of person with a lot of money who might have a more technical gift that's very big, they might come with their own technical team who are like, we know how to set this thing up. Are you interested? And then you could probably cross that bridge when you get there. Am I right that a lot of those people might, on the bigger end, might have that? They might come with the technical setup?
Yeah, I think you're thinking of the charitable trusts, like charitable remainder trusts.
Whether it's charitable trusts,
charitable remainder
things
trusts,
like
charitable
that.
lead trusts. Yeah, odds are, right, they're going to have a team that's already, they're going to have an estate planning attorney that's already drafted the trust, and your donor's now letting you know that you're a beneficiary of it. Okay, well, what does that mean exactly? All right, and you can have a conversation about that. But that's not a gift that you promoted. That's a gift that they devised on their own, and they've made you a beneficiary of it. If you don't promote those charitable trusts and other like charitable gift annuities and even life insurance gifts, and you're still going to have at least 3/4 of the gifts you would have if you did expand into those gifts by just promoting simple gifts and wills. So you don't need a gift acceptance policy. I think really just start querying your CRM database for those loyal, committed donors. You're working with two variables: number of gifts and number of years. So if you've been around for 20 years, go out for as long as your digital fundraising records go. If maybe they go 20 years, or maybe they only go 18 or 17 years, go that many years back and query for 20 gifts in 17 years.
Yeah.
See who's done it.
I mean, otherwise you're kind of talking about, someone who's been a monthly donor for just shy of 2 years. That would give you 20 gifts. I'd say if somebody is stuck with you every month for 2 years, they're probably pretty dedicated. as well.
Yeah, those recurring gifts can be a good source. It becomes a little bit age dependent.
Sure.
I do like to work with folks that are like 55 to 60 and over, just because of you got to think of the stewardship. So if a 60-year-old includes you in their will, you're going to live probably 30 years or so, let's say. If a 25 or 30-year-old puts you in their will, they're going to live for 60 or 70 years. Now,
fingers crossed.
Right.
Let's
Of
hope.
course. Yeah. We want all our donors to have long lives, but that's a big stewardship lift, like a 60 or 70 year stewardship. I think the likelihood of that gift from the 30-year-old remaining in the will until their death is a lot smaller than the likelihood of a 60-year-old putting you in their will and that death being there for you that gift being there for you at their death.
Yeah. So let's talk about how does plan giving interplay or affect with your other types of fundraising efforts? Does it hurt it? Does it help it? How do these things go together?
You just reminded me I could channel the naysayers again if you like. I don't know
All right,
this
let's
is
do it. I
annoying
love
you.
the
Is this
naysayers.
annoying you or is
No,
this
I'm
entertaining?
all
Okay.
about the naysayers.
Oh, we can't do planned giving. It's going to kill our other fundraising. You're going to murder our annual fund. We've got a campaign we're planning. You're going to kill it. We can't do planned giving. People are going to put gifts in their wills and they're going to stop their other giving. Are you out of your mind? Okay, naysayer, out the room. We've heard enough from you. We're going to cut your argument. Again, not the naysayer themselves, just their argument. We're cutting that off at the knees. I've been doing this since 1997, and I have seen thousands of people who have put gifts in wills increase their other giving to that same charity. Why?
That makes so much sense.
Why? Tell me why.
But tell me why.
Does it make sense?
I'll tell you why. Okay.
Why does it make
well,
sense?
Because like if I make a big investment in my will in the long-term success of this organization, I'm going to be extra invested in making sure that it does really well up until it gets the gift in my will. So it's like the difference between being engaged maybe and getting married, or just dating and getting married. Like if you put somebody in your will, a person or an organization, like you are really committing to making that organization as good as it can be. That was my first reaction.
Exactly right.
When you said that.
I agree that they are committed to your long-term success. That gift is gonna remain. They love you so much that they've put you alongside their husband, wife, partner, children, and grandchildren. That's how much they love your work. So they are.
Plus, it's different pots of money. We all think about and have access to money in different pots, right? So like you said earlier, when we die, there'll be assets that we no longer need and can become liquid, like houses. We don't have access to that money while we're living, especially if we're living in our houses. And then, we think about things differently too. Like with the legacy we want to leave is kind of like one pot of money, or kind of, like if you spend as much money on groceries as you spent on buying a house, right? Those are different pots and we think about them differently. So I really think of like that, those planned gifts and wills are coming from a different set of money than the money that people are giving when they're alive. Just like I've seen wealthy families, who will give. I've been in an organization where the family gave just a little bit of a check themselves. They had a private family foundation where they would give a much larger chunk of money from. And then separately, they had established a big foundation that had very specific goals, and that foundation only gave to that foundation's goals. But they also had this family foundation where they just gave wherever their personal interests were. And those were all separate pots of money for that family.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that you have a lot more at your disposable cash at your death. For most of us, that becomes a bigger pot than we do during our lives.
Yeah. So I want to just shift gears for those folks who are like, all right, we've got the wills piece going and we want to level up our game. What are the next levels for folks, and how do they get started with those?
Okay, if you want to go further, again, you don't ever need to in planned giving, but if you want to, um, gifts from financial assets, just being named a beneficiary of an IRA, a 401k, a life insurance policy. There are lots of other financial assets that have what's called a payable on death or transfer on death clause. You can be one of those death beneficiaries of other types of assets, like some brokerage accounts have that. Some bank accounts, checking and savings accounts, some have that clause. So anything where you can name a death beneficiary, a charity can be one of those beneficiaries. So, and you can carve up the death benefit. So let's say it's a life insurance policy, and you want to help your family first. Of course, I always say family comes first, but then can you carve out some for our work? So maybe 90% of the gift goes to partner or spouse, and then the other 10% is charity. And it might be just one charity, or it could be a couple of charities that can get that 10%. As long as at the end, on the beneficiary form, as long as all the percentages equal 100, the
Good.
donor has done what they need to do, and the money will get distributed at their death. So there are lots of financial assets you could be a beneficiary of.
Yeah.
So those are
A question
a
I
couple.
have, those are all great, and it definitely gets the wheels turning, and made me want to ask, because the conversation around DAFs have been growing, and we did a recent episode around
Mm.
DAFs, donor advised funds. What happens to those when their owner founder passes or dies?
Yeah, you typically have to name a successor who will. That's why a lot of people like donor advised funds, because they can involve their children in their philanthropy.
Mm,
So the children might be involved now while they're living in the grant making decisions, but then at their death, the children can take over the donor advised fund and manage the grant making themselves. So you typically have to name a successor. It's not a trustee, but a successor owner to the donor advised fund.
got it. So it's not necessarily liquidated. It doesn't have to be given to a
No, not
charity
necessarily.
when
Nope.
they die. Interesting. So before we run out of time, I do want to ask you, because my advice often to especially smaller organizations when they want to start a new type of fundraising, and I always recommend, like, start with your major donors, or I like to call it your high touch relationship giving, and then start thinking about your planned giving, because those are kind of the same folks, and then think about what I call scaled relationship fundraising. That's where we get into like digital marketing type efforts around fundraising. But I often like to recommend start by like outsourcing. If you can, get like a fractional leader or hire a consultant or somebody who's going to help you set up your basic systems and make that transition and the learning curve really simple and easy. What kind of services, I think you may have some, are available for people? What should they be looking for if they're like, yep, I'm going to hire somebody to help me get going with this and put the basic pieces in place?
Well, a lot of my work is launching planned giving programs at small and mid-sized nonprofits for folks who don't want to do it alone. Although, as a consultant, I'll tell you, you can. I mean, I've got 27 years of experience, so I can grease it for you. I can help you avoid some pitfalls and things that we didn't have a chance to talk about today, because 27 years of experience is valuable. But you can do it on your own.
Yep.
And I used to be a lawyer, but I'm one of the few. I don't practice law any longer, but I'm one of the few who will tell you that you certainly don't need a lawyer on your staff or on your board, even, or as a consultant, to launch planned giving. But a lot of my work is helping with the launch, and then also staying on and growing and building planned giving programs.
Yeah. So my recommendation, so that Tony doesn't have to toot his own horn, whether you hire Tony or somebody else, is that you do, whenever you're starting a whole new type of activity, whether it's fundraising or something else, if you can, especially if it brings in money, if it's an activity that brings in money, if you can grease the wheels, if you can have the money start coming in sooner, it's usually a really good idea to invest in a little bit of speed and shortening the time to getting the money coming in. Because while there's nothing I think in a nonprofit you can't do yourself, and I've done almost all the
I know
things
you
by
have.
myself,
I know you have.
right? I can tell you from experience, going slow costs a lot, and doing it yourself usually means going slowly. So that's my little tip for everybody. All right, before we're out of time, final word of advice, and how can people reach you specifically?
Final word of advice: don't fear planned giving. It's not too technical. It's not a death conversation. It's not going to kill your other fundraising. All right, all these things we talked about. It's simple when you launch right, the way we talked about. Simple gifts and wills. You can reach me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Love to connect on LinkedIn. I'm also, my email is tony@tonymartignetti.com if you want to email directly. My website is tonymartignetti.com, and you'll find my consulting there and also my podcast.
Excellent. And we'll have all those links in the show notes for all of you listening. Tony, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you out there for listening and for all that you do to make our communities better. I bring guests like Tony to this podcast to help inspire you and give you the information you need to be even better at what you do. I know what it feels like, as we just talked about, to be an executive director. I've been one multiple times, as well as a founder multiple times, board member, program director, conference coordinator, and secret toilet fixer. And it's such a joy and honor to now be a consultant and coach to leaders like you. And because I know how overwhelming the work can be, in addition to these special guest episodes, I'm also giving you the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you can receive bite-sized weekly tips. And you can access that at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. The link will also be in the show notes. And if you have a moment, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review for this podcast, because it helps other leaders like you find the information that they need to make the impact in their communities. Until next time, take care of yourself. Take some time to think about whether or not it's time to start planned giving at your organization. And I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.